G'day everybody, Duckville here. Welcome to the dusty regions of Akalon Waste, one of the very premier sort of ladder maps. Some interesting styles of play can occur on this map. We're going to have a Zerg versus Terran here from the recently released replay pack from our Zerg player down the bottom right hand side. From Team Quantic, it is Hyun. He is, of course, a player who has been around for quite a while, of course, participating in Brood War as well in the NBC game team, and then making his transition into StarCraft 2, joining up with TSL, and, well, was around for quite a while, and then sort of has been a little bit in and out. He's a little bit of a player who sort of reminds me a little bit of Show, in the fact that he'll sort of pop up, do really well, and then disappear for a little while. It's sort of how Hyun has been, of course, coming second in one of the GSL Code S seasons to Sniper. And, you know, where is Sniper gone? That's what I want to know. But he's still a very, very good Zerg player, does really well. He's been in Korea, been in EU, and has, of course, been across to the States for some various events as well. His opponent up at the top left-hand side, playing for Team Evil Geniuses, of course, is one of their premier Terran players. It is DeMuslim. He's, you know, he's one of the really good, like, if you're a Terran player, like, these guys keep ranting about how DeMuslim isn't in WCSNA, but anyway, if you're a Terran player and you want to really have some, like, a really good education about how to play the game, like, with some commentary plus gameplay at the same time, DeMuslim has a wonderful stream for that kind of thing, so I would definitely suggest checking out his stream if you can, and, you know, seeing how he does things. He has a really nice, very solid sort of style. It's not necessarily like he'll go out and cheese every game or do anything sort of crazy like that. He just would sort of loves to play a really solid style, plays very, generally very safe and sort of standard sorts of games. There's nothing too crazy out of him. But we can see he's going to go for a command center first here in this game up against Hyun. We see that Hyun knows exactly what's going on and it's looked to be... He has no spawning pool, so I think we're going to see a very quick third hatchery here out of the Zerg player. From Quantic, he's going to head across down here, throw down that hatchery, and just try and keep his economy in a similar sort of position to where DeMuslim's is as well. So he sees the fast command center and says, alright, you're going to have a pretty decent economic basis for the opening of this game, so I want to do the same sort of thing. How do you do that? You get up an extra hatchery very, very quickly here. If it was cats, he'd probably throw down a fourth hatchery somewhere, sort of maybe inside the main or near the natural or something like that, just so he could have that extra lava coming in as well, but he's not going to go along that path. Not as crazy as cats can be from time to time, but we'll see the gas coming up to get his speed operational as quickly as he can. The metabolic boost, of course, a very important upgrade for the Lings right at the start of a Zerg versus Terran. We've got the spawning pool also coming up just behind that. So things proceeding at a relatively normal sort of pace right here. It is going to be a little bit more of a macro game. This map does lead to players tending to favor macro. You'll see Terran players who will love to take down these rocks, head across here, set up a nice little command center and all the mining there, drop down the rocks over here so that this section of the base is protected, and then set themselves up for a nice 3-base play. From time to time, some players will come down here to take this base as their third instead, but it's a lot rarer, just given the fact that there is a lot more space for Zerg to attack into in that path, and not to mention you can have multiple attacks that can come across these both of these directions. So what we'll probably see out of DeMuslim is a little bit of pressure out of him at the start, and then I would probably suggest we'll see him play a much more sort of a macro-based game. We'll probably see double E-bays coming up and really looking to take advantage of that mid-game Terran where the mines start to get into a really high count. Anywhere above 10 is a very sexy sort of amount for a Terran to have, and then you also see lots of drops and that sort of thing, which Muslim is very good at. He's very good with his drops. Meanwhile, for Hyun, he's got his macro powering up as quickly as he can. Lots of drones coming out for him. He's already up to 27 right now. More popping out as time goes on. Queens have been injecting at the main and the natural. We have a third queen now just popping out at the third base. So she's going to add in some extra larvae as well. A little bit kind of surprised. Sometimes some players will actually use that first dose of energy from the third queen as a creep spread starter, just because you don't necessarily have all the money that you need to actually utilize that extra burst of lava here. And in fact, there you go, Hyun's gonna do something very similar to that while building a fourth queen inside the natural there. We'll probably see another queen come up at the third base as well, but the first few Hellions are making their way across the map. Hyun does have a couple of Lings to help defend against this. You know, Lings do have a little bit of a hard time against Hellions. This is that normal sort of 7-minute pressure timing where a Terran will normally come across with a couple of Hellions. It is a little bit delayed compared to a normal sort of build, just due to the fact that DeMuslim did go for a fast expand, but with enough Lings out, Hyun should be okay here, unless he sort of lines up all his Lings like that, but does take quite a few hits, but gets rid of one of the Hellions. The third and the fourth Hellion now just popping out as well, just across to the side here. So going to look to move to sort of a standard sort of position in this game where both players just happy to macro up. As we can see, the harvester count continues to grow. Double upgrades now coming out of DeMuslim as well. He finally picks up another gas now that he is going to start spending some gas on these upgrades and also on the factory units that are now about to come out. We'll probably see this switch across with a mine or two. Yeah, get started on one mine. No second mine just as of yet. But what we'll probably see is a starport get started very soon. It'll probably switch over with this factory and get those medevacs cranking, because of course that is a very important part of playing as a Terran. You need to get that harassment going. You can't just let a Zerg player just freely drone up to something like 70 to 80 drones and just have a whole fun time with their economy. And Hyun is actually going to go for his own double upgrades here. We've got melee and carapace for these Lings on the ground being upgraded. It of course adds a little bit of bonus damage to the Bailings that will come out very soon as well. Macro hatch being built by Hyun, and this is just a very content sort of game at this point. It's just very safe sort of standard sort of play. Both players just getting prepared for the mid-game sort of transitions where we'll see DeMuslim move into a high count of Marines, of course those Widow Mines as well, and Hyun, well, we can see that he's mainly focusing on those ground units for the time being. A lot of players will add in a Spire at some time very sort of soon once their gas starts to increase, now that he's got around about, what is it, he's got pretty much his 6 gas now coming in. So we'll see if Hyun's going to go across to the path of those mutas there. Interesting to see he is upgrading Burrow at this point. Not an upgrade you get to see all the time, but it is something which I think a lot of Zerg players are just starting to play around with. You don't necessarily have to get, you know, amazing Bailing landmines off every time or anything like that, but if you can utilize some burrowed units such as the Bailings, such as maybe some Lings around the map to prevent your opponent from expanding too far, you can't really use that upgrade in a very useful fashion. So we can see that Hyun is actually just going to go for a timing here based on his 1-1 being upgraded. The Bailing speed is also being researched right now. We can see that little Bailing claw thingy, whatever it is quivering about, and it looks like the Bailing's going to have a quick look inside. We'll see that it is just an orbital command there. There are no SCVs or anything like that, and Hyun is going to really put some high power pressure on right here. There is only one bunker at the front, a couple of Widow Mines at the back, but these Bailings are going to just tear apart that bunker here and also soak up a couple of the Widow Mine shots, and here we go. He's going straight in. It looks like the Bailings are going to roll through. He's going to try and find some of these Marines. DeMuslim doing a pretty decent job of splitting up those Marines, but Lings coming in from the side, Banes from the side as well. And this is pretty much a point where a player like Hyun, who is used to doing some really high-powered pressure, is just going to go to absolute town on the Terran player here. These Lings won't necessarily finish up his opponent here, because DeMuslim, of course, a wonderful Terran player, is probably has the strength to just recoup his forces and get them all back together to hold off the Lings for the moment. But more and more units are now starting to come in for Hyun. He's got so many Lings just charging their way across the map. 25 Bailings are now in construction for Hyun. He is just going to town on everything here. No drops possible for DeMuslim at this point. This is normally a point where you'd see someone like DeMuslim just dropping into the main base, into the third base as well, but he has no time, no chance to do that. He needs to get these Marines to get their combat shields, their 2-2, keep them splitting, all these kinds of things. He has to keep doing these continuously because Hyun is just continuing on with this very high-powered, low-level, but very high-powered aggression here with all of these Lings and Banes. 2-2 now researching for Hyun at this point. His Spire is just over halfway done as well, and he's just going to continue on. He has limited the... He's limited the third base, as we can see here. A burrowed Ling, an Overlord dropping down some creep, all these things blocking off this base for the time being here. And DeMuslim's going to have a hard time getting his third base operational just for the time being, considering there has been so much going on at his front door. Hyun is now just going to continue on with some of these Lings poking through, soaking up some of the Widow Mines. The Lings and the Banes now going to try and charge through to take care of some of those Marines, but gorgeous splits from DeMuslim there, doing a wonderful job keeping the majority of his Marines alive there. We still do have 4 Widow Mines out on the map, but as we said before, the key thing is that Hyun has not been disrupted in his mining at his 3rd. He's probably going to go take a 4th base very soon. As we can see, he is just getting up the muta count right now. So getting these 11 mutas out really helps out in terms of stopping these drops, because you can guarantee that now DeMuslim has stabilized for the moment. He's got these continuous Marines now popping out. In fact, as I say that, they're not as continuous as I would have thought. But he's going to look to possibly go for some drops right now. And the timing of these mutas now popping out is really, really helpful for dealing with that kind of thing. So excellent play here from Hyun, just to recognize what's going on. All right, my opponent is now stabilized. I can't really invest in going too hard into those Lings and Banes anymore. And in fact, for some reason, Hyun... okay, that was a little bit odd that he sacrificed most of those mutas to all of those Marines there. Of course, the Marines do have 2 too, so they shred apart mutas if they get a little bit of stim active and get a little bit of time to go to work on them. So the mutas are downsized for the moment. It looks as if Hyun is not going to invest in them anymore. In fact, he is going to grab 4 more, along with his +1 attack upgrades. The 4th base now operational, and 54 Lings have just been produced by Hyun. So he's going to try and keep the pressure on his opponent, just to keep him back. We mentioned it before, just try to keep DeMuslim on the back foot for now, just so that he can't really get out on the map with his medevacs dropping out, Marines, all these sorts of things, mines and all that kind of stuff. In fact, if we look at the worker kill tally, there have been 0 workers killed. How often do you get to see a Terran player who is obviously a very high caliber player who hasn't done a single thing about the economy of a Zerg player? And this is a point where, as we can see, Hyun's going to invest in some static defenses, spores, spines at some of the outlying bases. We'll probably see a couple down here at the 4th as well. But he's just continuing to harass his opponent here. The destructible rock's going to block off this base for the moment, but this is also a very sort of small sort of area to try and run Lings through. So I'd be very surprised if Hyun tries to take this down and then try and just barrel his way into this 3rd base. What we'll probably see from him is backing up for the moment. There is a clump of burrowed banelings here. It looks as if DeMuslim just traversing around that for the time being. Widow Mine's burrowing back off to the side. He's got his own version of a mine there, and it looks like there is a drop now just pushing down the right-hand side of the map here. DeMuslim going to try and drop in at the 3rd base of Hyun, but that is not going to go too well. Where are those banelings? He's right on top of those units. Oh my god. Goodbye. And Hyun gets a huge detonation on that triple Baneling landmine. So that is a really, really nice little battle victory there for Hyun. As we can see, DeMuslim just about to finish his 3-3. Drilling claws on the way, 11 Marines at a time, but 12 Banelings now being picked up by Hyun. He's got a very, very large amount of units on the ground. 91 Zerglings, 29 Banelings, with more about to pop out. And we still do have around about 10 mutas up in the sky. So he's been able to really control the drops. We sort of mentioned a few times now. He's been controlling the drops, taking out some of those medevacs, stopping any sorts of drops with the static defense that we can see here. There is still another random sort of drop out on the map, and he's been clearing up some of the creep, but I mean, the creep spread of Hyun just continues on. He's continuing to push it across all the way through the top edge of the map now, also pushing towards the bottom side. This queen is just throwing down creep tumors wherever she can, so Hyun is just keeping up this creep spread. It is really helping him out with his awareness of what's going on the map. Speaking of which, DeMuslim almost losing those Marines that were there underneath that medevac here, but he's now finally established a 4th base. We've got a planetary switching in here, a couple of turrets going up as well, a few Marines and mines also available to help defend this base, and it looks as if what's going on here? Alright, he's on the low ground, so DeMuslim has been able to take advantage of the fact that Marines can shoot through cliffs, and with that vision of the high ground there, he's able to actually really efficiently dispose of all of these units here. It's not often you get to see something kind of odd like that, but as you can see, DeMuslim has regained his really large count of Marines right now, trying to push in towards the big flock of mutas and the Banes and the Lings that are approaching him, but from the back, we can see that DeMuslim is being flanked with the largest flank you will ever see. Lings, Banes, and mutas all approaching from the backside there, and that is a huge, possibly a death blow right now to DeMuslim's forces. He does have all of these Marines continuing to stream out of his main base, but I mean, when you've lost that many at that point, you're down to 90, well, around about 100 supply compared to a 152 supply of the Zerg player. Things start to get a little bit hairy from this point. We can see that there's no real harassment going on in the economy of DeMuslim, but the fact that he has lost so much of his forces there, he does have 3-3, so he'll hold out for the time being. But things looking a little bit grim right now for the EG Terran player. We can see he's trying to micro back and forth there, a very common thing to see from DeMuslim. He does have excellent micro with his Marines and his Marauders and those medevacs as well. But I mean, now with the mine count reduced to 2, there's actually very little that DeMuslim's going to be able to do here. This is kind of like if you were back in Wings of Liberty, if you lost all of your tanks and you only had Marines to try and deal with a count of, what is that, like 25 banelings. We've got all these lings, mutas being added in slowly but surely. The mutas do only have 0-1 at the moment on their upgrades, but that doesn't matter too much. All these guys are here for to clean up these medevacs where they can, grab a couple of Widow Mines as well if needed, and Hyun is now slowly starting to push his way through. We can see that the creep has now made its way across the map to basically DeMuslim's natural base, and we can see possibly the final push now coming in from Hyun. What does DeMuslim have? He's got a lot of Marines. They've got 3-3. They've got Stim. They've got a couple of medevacs up in the sky, but I mean, it's only 5 medevacs. The Widow Mine count slowly starting to increase, but will it be enough? Here we go. Hyun rolling his way across the fields below the natural base of DeMuslim. Widow Mine's getting off some really decent hits here, and bodies of lings and blood flying across the ground there, but DeMuslim, does he have enough? He's got a 4th base. He is keeping himself in this game right now just purely because of the fact that these mines and the Marines are just so incredibly strong. We'll see if he's able to take the fight back to his opponent. That's one thing which we have barely seen in this game, is DeMuslim taking the fight to his opponent, keeping the Zerg on his side of the map and saying, you know, I'm coming at you right now. This is finally the time where DeMuslim has been able to do that. He's been kept back in his base for so long, sniping down a couple of overseers here, meaning that the mines will be able to do a little bit more damage, but it looks like some lings have found a little bit of something to nibble on right now, and more lings and Bane just somehow find their way behind the lines of DeMuslim inside the natural base here. This could turn into a very interesting base trade at this point. Marines, mines, and medevacs all pushing at the 5th base of Hyun and have taken it out, and it looks like we'll get a drop in towards the 4th base as well. Medevac not going to survive too long, but this is the big story here in this game. Hyun is all over his opponent's production facilities right here. He has been able to take out quite a lot of the SCVs up at the back there. The Widow Mine will burrow and try and deal with some of the lings, and DeMuslim is forced to retreat back with the majority of his forces. Will he be able to clean it up? I would say he should be able to. But the issue is that his SCV count is now down to 46. Will he be able to keep his economy up at a decent pace? He does have mules. He does have the 4 command centers up and running. But now we can see that the 3rd has been removed. The 4th is still up and running, which is all very nice and good. But here come the Banelings. Hyun says, I am coming through, sir. And Banelings rolling onto the planetary fortress here, actually leaving those SCVs to run their way. And it looks as if some huge hits with the Banelings and the Lings of Hyun there. And that is pretty much it, I would say. Down to just the 80 supply is DeMuslim. 18 SCVs left over for him. Barely mining at his natural base here. He may stabilize here. I'm not actually sure. He could... Well, with those good Baneling hits on the ramp there, he is actually able to blast down just big clumps of Zerg units. But, I mean... Look at it. Look at this. We've now got lings burrowing underneath the command center here at the natural. We've got creep spread that's pushed its way into the 3rd base as well, along with another pesky burrowed ling there. And DeMuslim is just sitting very, very shakily on 22 Marines, 8 Widow Mines, and the 9 SCVs. So he's in a very, very troublesome position right now. His opponent is up at 58 drones. Not necessarily that perfect sort of amount that you want at the 26-minute mark, but I mean, he's got such a lead, and the game is effectively over. DeMuslim is going to go for one last push here. A couple of Widow Mines will get a few good hits on some of those links here, and DeMuslim is now just trying to push through his opponent's side of the map. 61 supply to 98. Of course, a lot of the supply for Hyun is in the workers. As you can see here, the army count is actually relatively even, which does bode quite well for a Terran player. And Hyun very cleverly leaves his Widow Mines, leaves the Banelings, sorry, on top of the Widow Mines here, and Demuslim is going to get inside this fourth base here. He should be able to take this down, I think, but the Muta's now starting to come across. More Banelings now rolling their way down across the ramp there. Looks like that Widow Mine was not able to activate. Hyun forces those units out. Looks like the Widow Mine is able... Ooh, that was very close for those drones there. Wisely done by Hyun to get those drones out just in time, but they were very lucky to escape the clutches of that Widow Mine. As we can see, Demuslim has been able to get some of his workers back together. Like, we're now up to a total of 10. That's huge. But there is a GG. He's unable to keep the economy going from that point there. Just far too behind at that point, regardless of the damage that he did here at the fourth base of Hyun. And Hyun takes a victory against EG Demuslim. Now, as we can see, the 1-1 upgrades are now done for Cats. Swarm Hosts now starting to make their way out. 6 are now going to be out on the map, and he can probably start to slowly just maybe move himself across the map. Like, I wouldn't... Like, the problem with this map...